Welcome to the LawyerFair.co.uk daily podcast. LawyerFair helps businesses find the right lawyer at the fairest price. But on this podcast, we just chew the fat with some great guests.
So there we have it. It is, again, the LawyerFair Daily Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. It's Andrew Weaver, the CEO of LawyerFair.co.uk. And there's a nice coincidence with today's guest. There was actually an OECD report that came out about schools failing to take advantage of technology in the classroom to tackle the digital divide. Lots of schools around the world have technology, but it's not necessarily actually improving the results. And so linked into that is my guest today, who is Julian Hall, ultra-preneur. Welcome, Julian.
Thank you, Andrew. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, I'm good. Sorry about the link there. But the reason why there's a link with Julian is that you set up ultra-kids.club and spinning out of that Ultra Academy, which is actually about bringing entrepreneurship into schools and education, which is what we'll come to. But Julian, just give me a little background about your career, and I'm interested in the concept of ultrapreneur.
Yes. So I guess, if I take it back, I got into a kind of situation where I was running my own business, and people were quite interested in my entrepreneurial story, and I would be asked to speak at universities and colleges and even kind of corporate networking events around what has spurred me to do this entrepreneur thing. And I would get questions after the event from people saying, should they remortgage their house to do this entrepreneurship thing? Should they, should they drop out of university to be an entrepreneur? And I felt like I needed to, give them a responsible answer. So I looked at entrepreneurship as a model, and I came to the conclusion that entrepreneurship was flawed, mainly because, the majority of entrepreneurs fail. And coming from a corporate background, I was taught to look at processes, improve them, and optimize them. And I thought, if entrepreneurship was a process in a corporate company, or if entrepreneurship was a car part in an engine, it would probably be recalled. And I wanted to kind of reverse engineer what worked for me as an entrepreneur, so that I could deliver it to others. And that's when I came up with the concept of ultrapreneurship, essentially, which kind of suggests that we need to take a different approach when dealing with our kind of success. And when I looked at the entrepreneurs that were out there in my network who were really, really successful, I realized that knowingly or unknowingly, they focused on a number of key areas of their life which provided what I call an enabling environment for their success. So knowingly or unknowingly, they had positive relationships with their family and their friends. They took time to look after their physical and nutritional health. They took time to look after their own internal well-being. And they also did what they loved. You can't sustain success doing things that, you just hate day in and day out. So I looked at that as a model, and I came up with the idea of ultrapreneurship, which comes from the Latin word to go beyond. Ultra means really to go beyond, and that's to go beyond the idea of just making money and thinking about creating value, because value is you create value. Money is a byproduct of the value. People go out there and say, I want to make money, right? But we're not the Bank of England. You can't physically make money, but what you can do is you can create a product or a service and create enough value around that product or service to get people to part with their hard-earned cash. And I think with a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurs, they focus solely on, right, I've got to make this money, I've got bills to pay, I've got to, get into the market, turn over revenue. And I think they forget about, the value that we need to create or deliver to another human being. And it's that human being that's going to pay us. And we also forget that essentially we are as important or more important than the business, because if we're not in good shape, then the business won't be in good shape. And that's essentially the whole philosophy around entrepreneurship.
Oh, it's fascinating, and I love the fact that it's about working towards a life purpose rather than making cash. Doing something you love and you enjoy, and almost as a byproduct. The fact that it's successful and makes cash is fantastic. But I think I agree with you entirely. I think too many people go into business generally, not necessarily just entrepreneurship. Going to a job. There has to be just a little bit more to life, doesn't it, in terms of what your purpose is of doing these things.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And particularly in entrepreneurship. And you mentioned the family. And funnily enough, I only wrote an article today about my own kind of startup journey, which has been quite late, frankly, entrepreneurship, launching my own business, and the impact it has on family, and making sure that that remains a really positive and main focus of your life. Because these things can take over. Entrepreneurship and businesses can take over very quickly, can't they, in terms of your family life?
Yeah, absolutely. They can. They
But
can
but
really more than we think. I think.
No, no, absolutely, and I'm still
Yeah.
learning that curve. I mean, Julian, you've clearly got an amazing background, talking all over the world, seminars. I think 3 books that have been Amazon bestsellers. So, anybody who wants more about Julian, julianhall.co.uk, Ultrapreneur. But the reason I've brought you on today specifically is to talk about the taking entrepreneurship into schools, and initially with the Ultra Kids Club concept, Julian. Again, just give us some background on that.
So I came up with the idea of, teaching young people entrepreneurship because in coaching adult entrepreneurs, as it were, I realized that a lot of the reason why adults aren't successful in entrepreneurship is because of limiting thoughts, cycles of behavior, or a limiting mindset, which comes from something which happened, when they were younger. And it also dawned on me that if you're taught from the age of, 5 years old to follow orders and to do what you're told, and you are set within a very firm, deliberate structure, it's very difficult to then think outside of the box and be innovative and do all the things that you are required to be as an entrepreneur. And, it just so happens that a lot of really successful entrepreneurs come from, some kind of hardship, or there's some kind of, significant life event that happened earlier on that spurred them to do these things. And, that's not a working model. That's not something that you can teach. And it's not something that you actually want for young people. You don't want to say, okay, well, for you to be a successful entrepreneur, you've got to have gone through something difficult, right? But the fact is, unemployment's going up. There are less and less jobs out there. There are PhD students being churned out, having to work in McDonald's. And, I suppose we are quickly realizing that employability is now going to include creating your own employment and not just going out and finding a job, because that's just not the reality for a lot of people. But the skills around creating your own employment just don't exist. They're just not there. They're not taught anywhere. And, it's not even something that a parent can pass down to a child, because, they're not taught those skills either. So it looked like a gaping hole in education and in our society. And I suppose, even though I'm teaching entrepreneurship to children, what I'm actually looking at is teaching entrepreneurship to the adults of tomorrow. And, I really believe in our economy. And I just think to myself, if I can contribute to us having, a stronger economy in the future, because there are more jobs being created through more entrepreneurial thinkers, then that would be a worthwhile thing to do.
Well, I mean, I have to say, I think it's absolutely brilliant. And you hear these stories of the Richard Bransons et al., who, showed their entrepreneurial flair at the age of 11 selling secondhand lemonade or something like that. The reality is that those guys, there was something about them, their upbringing, as you say, there was something that triggered that. But actually, as a concept, entrepreneurialism is has been completely ignored in the curriculum. And I just wonder, how much potential, how much commercial potential has been lost with kids who just, I mean, I there wasn't a sausage taught in my school about being in business. I mean, I learned it from my dad, for better or worse. But there was certainly nothing at all that was taught to me ever about it. And I just think it's brilliant. So what actually goes on? What happens? I mean, I've seen a brilliant pitch on your website from, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce her name. Mahala, is it?
Malachi.
Malachi, I'm sorry.
Malachi, yeah.
A brilliant pitch from this 10-year-old girl on your website to Google for Bee Sweet Lemonade. I mean, just give us a bit of background as to what actually happens with Ultra Kids Club.
So what we do is we deliver a program which runs across a term or an academic year. And the reason for that is because, for anything to have impact, it's got to be done over a sustained period, as you would with any other subject. So we deliver it either independently of the curriculum, or ideally we run it alongside the curriculum. And I'll explain what I mean. I'm not of the opinion that an entrepreneur will be successful if they drop out of school with no GCSEs. It's possible, but I don't think it's a blueprint. And a lot of the entrepreneurs that I work with are either well educated or have taken the time to continuously, educate themselves in their adult life. And if I didn't have a good education, secondary education, I don't think I'd be able to do the things that I do as an entrepreneur. So I evangelize education as a must-have for entrepreneurial success. So essentially, my approach to delivering entrepreneurship into schools is to say that I'll be reinforcing the core academics in the national curriculum, using entrepreneurship as a vehicle to make education relevant. Teachers know now that if a child doesn't see the relevance of their education, they will disengage. By providing a practical spin on, why you're learning all this stuff and using entrepreneurship to do that, I think it makes education more interesting, more exciting, and it connects children back to the real world, back to what's happening. A lot of these kids, they know what's going on, with all of these entrepreneurs. I mean, when we did the launch at Fleet School, we put up pictures of Mark Zuckerberg and Donald Trump and Oprah Winfrey, and they knew who they were, and they even knew, how they made their riches. And we're talking about 7 and 8-year-olds. But no one's really there to foster that and to, unpick what it means, and to encourage any entrepreneurial ideas that they have themselves. And that's essentially what we're trying to do with the Ultra Kids Club.
It's brilliant, and you're getting good buy-in from the educational establishment.
Well, yeah, by the establishment, if you're talking about schools themselves, whenever we speak to teachers, heads, it's not something that has, as far as I'm aware, has been currently presented to them, and I think for them, they know that it's something that their teachers just aren't trained to do, so they'll need the assistance of entrepreneurs to come in and do the work, alongside them. And perhaps, entrepreneurs haven't seen a commercial opportunity in delivering programs of this nature. So they kind of don't see it as, a big enough fish to fry and kind of turn away from it. But, for me, it's not just about profit. It's about impact, and without getting all warm and cuddly around social impact. I kind of tripped and fell into this space, but I don't think it's all about just making money. If I wanted to make money, I would just still be in an investment banking job, which I left. So I actually do want to create some impact, leave some kind of legacy. But yeah, no, to answer your question, schools see the genuineness, if that's even a word, in what I'm doing. The transparency in what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to achieve, and I think that's really what they buy into. I think they buy into, the vision of what we're trying to do and the impact that we're trying to create. And typically, what happens is schools have got their own agenda, they've got their own issues, and we normally tailor our program around whatever it is they're trying to achieve, whether it's around science or English or maths or disengaged kids or even high performing kids who they need to keep interested in school. So far the reception has been it's been overwhelming, if I'm honest. And it's been really encouraging.
Well, that's brilliant. And as I said at the beginning, that there's a spin-off now called Ultra Academy, which is going into secondary schools. Is that right?
That's right. So the original idea was to get to kids as young as possible, but there's thousands of secondary schools in the UK who have students in there who are actually already doing a lot of stuff on the side. Whether it's fixing bikes or selling sweets in school. All of the traditional stuff is being done today, but again, nothing's been done to foster it. Yeah. And with the exposure of things like The Apprentice and Dragon's Den, and all of these young entrepreneurs, creating all these Snapchats and Instagrams, like young people are seeing the connection between entrepreneurship and themselves. But the teachers aren't able to. The teachers can only go so far in helping to develop and support that. So as a result, we've now created a program, a 39-week program which spans across the academic year to deliver into secondary schools.
Well, listen, Julian, that's been brilliant and really interesting. Is there anything that you're looking for? Are you looking for entrepreneurs? Are you looking for schools to get in touch? What's the need for Ultra Kids Club to grow?
We just need to speak to as many schools as possible. So right now for us, we're doing some really good work, and we just need to get a bigger megaphone to shout about what we're doing, because we know that there's a need out there. Not necessarily a need for entrepreneurship. They won't articulate it in that way, but there's a need to engage children back into education, get them back on track, or to support high performing children and students and young people. And I think we've got a really cool way of doing that. So we just want to get our message out to as many schools as possible. But we're also building up a network of entrepreneur ambassadors that will help us to deliver the material into schools, around the UK. So we're looking for entrepreneurs who are interested in, kind of giving back, or, teaching young people some of the life lessons that they've learned through entrepreneurship. Because I think, once you can kind of transfer that, again, it makes it relevant because it's coming from a person and not necessarily a textbook. And I think it's something that young people really resonate with. And, who doesn't want to give back?
No, absolutely. And just final question of you, Julian. And in terms of geography, where you're working at the moment, is it southeast based? Is it London based? Where?
At the moment, it's southeast based, yes. Yep. But we've got interest from all over the country. So we are currently working to scale and expand into different parts of the UK over the next 6 to 12 months.
Perfect. Okay. And so getting in touch with you, the website is
ultrakids.club or ultraacademy.org.uk.
Perfect. Okay. Well, we'll make a link on our notes that are attached to this podcast. Well, and if anybody wants to know more about Julian, julianhall.co.uk, and Ultrapreneur will land you very much on his website and take it from there. Julian, we are talking quite late into the evening. If there's a lesson about entrepreneurship, it's that the day never ends. But I really appreciate you joining me in it, and that's been a really interesting conversation.
No, thanks for having me, Andrew. I really do appreciate it.
Not at all. Thanks, Julian. That was the LawyerFair Daily Podcast. There'll be more tomorrow. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks for listening to the LawyerFair.co.uk Daily Podcast. If you'd like to listen to more, why not subscribe and download each episode via iTunes, or visit us on the LawyerFair.co.uk website.